Hello and welcome back to Project 380. In this video you're going to find out why I made a custom exhaust for some extra space underneath at the back. So I've had the Mark 1 Merlot for a year now. It's been my daily driver. I've done a couple of shows in it and a good few thousand miles. And all of those miles the car has been sitting on max speed and rod coilovers, which to be fair have been pretty good. I was actually surprised about the reliability and the road handling, and they weren't anywhere near as awful as people said. But since this is my daily driver and it is really low, I'm limited to places I can go and park. And getting it on the 4-post lift at work is a complete pain. So a couple of you have guessed it, but I'm ditching those max speed and rod coilovers and I'm installing air suspension. Hopefully this is going to make my daily driver even better. With these, hopefully I could go anywhere, park anywhere. Hopefully it'll make it easier to jack the car up off the floor, and hopefully the ride should be better. So I'll show you everything I've got to install air ride in this car. So I've got the strut and bag set up from D2 Racing, a 4-gallon air tank, a load of air hose, a Viair 425C Gen 2 compressor, some wiring, and a buttload of fittings. So installing this air ride I'm not going to be doing in the traditional way. You'll see why in a little while. And as you've just seen, there's quite a lot to install. So I may well separate this video into a mini series of a few videos. So in this video, I'm going to be installing the air tank and compressor. This may be common knowledge for a lot of you, but some of you may not know. Air suspension uses compressed air for these airbags. It fills the bag with compressed air to raise the suspension up and expels that air to lower the suspension down. Now to create that compressed air, you're going to need a compressor. The compressor's job is to create compressed air, and you want to store that compressed air somewhere, and that's where the air tank comes in. Now some of you may have noticed this is not a D2 air tank, and that's for two reasons. For some reason D2 don't make a full kit for the MX5 anymore. You can only buy the struts and bags. So in this box is just 4 of these. Now that's worked out in my favour as I can make my own kit. But you'll see a lot of complete kits come with all the struts and bags, the air tank, the compressor, all the wiring and plumbing. And most of the stuff comes on a wooden board. And what a lot of people do is slap that wooden board in the middle of their boot. But this being my daily driver, I really want to keep my boot space for such things as my hair dryers and straighteners. So I won't be slapping everything on a wooden board and putting it in the boot. I'm going to try and retain as much space in here as possible. So a little bit untraditional for the air ride scene, but this is actually where that custom exhaust comes into play. So the other day I made this custom exhaust. If you haven't seen this video, go check it out now. But in this video I explained that this exhaust had to be custom as I need the back box moved over slightly and out of the way. And that has created all this space here. And all this space is actually going to be for the air tank. There is plenty of room for it here, and it's going to keep the air tank out of my boot. But before I install this air tank, it needs a little bit of assembly first. So this is the air tank I've chose. It's a 4-gallon tank, aluminium finished in satin black powder coat, and I'll get on to why I've chosen an aluminium tank in a moment. But it came with 2 mounting brackets and 5 1/4-inch MPT holes. This tank was ideal for me as it's got a hole on either end, one at the bottom or top, whichever way you mount it, and 2 on the opposite sides at the ends. So this is the ideal tank for me. But before I install it in the car, it needs a little bit of assembly first for 2 reasons. One, I want to put the fittings in all the holes first, so I know where underneath the car I can mount this, as I don't want to mount it and then not have enough space on the end for a fitting. And 2, because the fittings are going to be quite difficult to install once the tank is on the car. So the fittings I need to install first is a water trap, a pressure switch, a pressure sensor, a drain plug, and 2 1/4-inch MPT to 6mm push fit fittings. So first thing to install is the water trap. A lot of setups don't come with a water trap, but I think it's a really good idea to put one of these in. So compressing air creates moisture, and the last thing you want in an air ride system is moisture. And that is one reason I chose the aluminium tank. If you choose a steel tank and you do get moisture in it, over time the tank will rot from the inside out. and then obviously fail. So even though I've chose a tank which is aluminium which won't rot out, I'm still going to install a water trap, as I don't want water to get in any of the other components, like the pressure switch, or the buttons to raise the car up and down, as if water gets in these and they corrode, they just won't work. So I'm actually going to direct mount that right in the end here. But before I install that, even though these are 1/4 inch MPT threads, which are self-sealing, I'm going to put a little bit of sealing paste on it first, just to make sure there's no chance of this leaking. On most water traps you should see an arrow indicating the direction of the airflow. So this port should go to the compressor and this port should go to the air tank. A little bit of thread sealant on that. On the end of the water trap, I'm going to put this leader hose that I've had custom made. Now this fitting has actually got a flare, so this should seal itself perfectly fine. I'm just going to put that on finger tight for now, as I still want a little bit of movement in this pipe, as I don't quite know where it's going just yet. But I should be able to do this one up once it's underneath the car. Next up, the two 90-degree push lock fittings. Now I'm using two as I want two lines to run to the front of the car, and these have already come with sealing paste on the threads, so they could go straight into the tank. And I'm going to install them in the end ports. Now for the drain plug. This is a 1/4 inch MPT fitting with a turn valve on it, which when turned just a little bit will let a little bit of air out. Turn it more, it will let the air out quicker. Now this wants to be installed on the bottom of the tank. At the minute this tank is actually upside down for me, but it needs to be at the bottom, so when you're draining it it's going to create moisture, and this being at the bottom, all the moisture will drip down and out of the drain plug. A little bit of sealing paste. So that's 4 out of the 5 holes taken up on this tank, but I've still got 2 more things to install, and these are both 1/8 MPT, whereas the tank is 1/4 MPT. So in the last port on the tank, I've put a 1/4 to 1/8 MPT reducer, and I've got a 3-way 1/8 MPT T to allow me to fit the pressure switch and the pressure sensor. So I'm going to first screw in the T to the tank, and then screw the switch and the sensor into the T. I completely forgot to mention MPT fittings don't need to be that tight, and especially these, most of them are hollow and they're going into an aluminium tank. So if you over tighten them, they'll either snap or strip the threads, so you don't need to be as heavy handed as you think you need to be. But with all them fittings installed, that means the tank is ready for the car. So I've spent a little bit of time off of camera playing about with the position of the air tank underneath the car, and I've marked out my 4 mounting holes, and I think the position is perfect. But I'll explain more once it's bolted into the car. I'm going to put some safety glasses on, as I really don't want rust in my eye. And then I'm going to drill these holes. I'm going to drill the holes from this side, which means I should really remove that carpet first. That's all bolted in underneath the car now. Done it all off of camera, as it was a massive pain to mount up by myself. I used some aluminium bar to make some spreader plates, just so the bolts don't pull through. But I'm really happy with the position of the tank. Once the car's on the floor, I can access the water trap really easily, and the drain plug. And I think it's plenty far enough away from the exhaust. It's tucked up nice and high, so if this tank hits on anything, something has seriously gone wrong. Now for the compressor. The compressor shouldn't really be mounted underneath the car where the air tank is, as we want this to stay as dry and warm as possible. So I'm going to mount it in the boot. I think I'm going to mount it over this side somewhere, tucked up nice and neatly in this corner, and use a hole somewhere down there for the leader hose to go from the tank to the compressor. This should keep things nice and neat, and hopefully being in the boot, it won't be too noisy inside the cab of the car. So I've made myself a little cardboard template and marked out where I want the compressor to sit. I've then taken that cardboard template and transferred it to a bit of stainless steel and drilled out all my mounting holes and cut a little bit of a relief access round here for that leader hose to connect to the air tank. I've then cut up the boot carpet so that can bolt onto that stainless there like that. between the compressor and the stainless, and the rest of the boot carpet will fold over and hide this plate up nicely. There was already a hole here in the chassis leg. I've just put a nutsert inside it, and I'm also going to use a bolt hole that already existed here. I've glued some rubber down to stop any vibrations, to hopefully keep the noise of the compressor to a minimum. So now I'm going to take that plate and the carpet and bolt the compressor to it. And then put that plate with the compressor in the car. Now I'm not quite ready to bolt that plate down, as I'm going to fiddle around connecting this leader hose up underneath the car to the air tank. Once that's connected together, I'll bolt the plate down. That's all plumbed in and bolted down, and all the carpet back in. I think that looks really neat, nice tucked up out the way there. And by putting the compressor there and the air tank underneath, I've still got loads of boot space left. Perfect for a daily driver with air ride. So I think that's a good place to end video number 1 of the air ride build. So make sure you join me in the next video. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be putting the suspension in or doing the plumbing and wiring next. So as per usual, like, comment, share, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. Perfect for a daily... Ooh.